Good afternoon, UH staff. Welcome to the Conversations with Staff event. My name is Whitney Johnson, and I serve on the university's Staff Council as one of the co-chairs along with my colleague, Seth Evans.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's presentation. We're happy to have you.
On behalf of the entire Staff Council, we thank you all for joining us for today's event. Well, UH staff, it's been about 7 months since we've been working in what has been a bit of a different environment, whether you've been working remotely, in person, but with limited contact with colleagues you once saw every day of the week, or a combination of both. Our hope is that today's event, Virtual Etiquette, Discovering Your Online Presence, will help do just that, elevate your online presence, while also providing you with the tools and techniques to help you in your role. For today's event, we will first start by hearing from an expert on leveraging on online presence. Then we will conclude with each of you having the option to dive deeper into the functionalities of Zoom or Microsoft Teams by joining the breakout room for either. The links will be provided in the chat, and they were also sent in the email that went out this morning. In the breakout room, you'll have the opportunity to hear from two subject matter experts on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, depending on which one you decide to join. So let's get started. Today's guest, Natalie Weekly, is an image consultant who has spent over a decade building a highly cultivated toolkit to help her clients feel confident, empowered, and exceptionally well-dressed for any lifestyle or occasion. Through her business, Signature Style, she works with professionals at all levels of the organization to be the best version of themselves through style, personal presentation, body language, and the myriad of factors that go into being a person of influence. A frequent guest on Houston Life, Great Day Houston, and an oft-requested speaker for Fortune 500 companies, Natalie is driven by the philosophy that clothes should not be stressful, are a wonderful catalyst, and that our personal image impacts, influence, and reflects our intention. She and her husband are based in Houston with her two tiny interns. So without further ado, we welcome Natalie Weekly.
Hello and welcome to conference call number 252 for the month of November. I know we are all feeling some serious conference call fatigue, and I want to give you some tips today on how to continue to show up well and to take advantage of the unique situation that we have of having faces up close and personal when we are on conference calls together. Thank you, Whitney, for the introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Natalie Weekly, and I am an image consultant and brand consultant, and I'm excited to be with you today. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation, perhaps in a skillful way. Look at that. Okay, wonderful. So how to read the virtual room is something that's really important and sometimes hard to do, and yet something that we get to do easily when faces are so up close and personal. So I'm excited to share several things with you today. First, we're going to start with your style and the tips that, like, how to show up best in the virtual office. So we're going to talk about style a little bit first, and then I'm going to go into facial expressions. We're going to talk about what to do with that, and then we have some room for questions at the end as well. So please note those as you are listening today, because I'm happy to answer those for you. So a few tips on how to show up best in a conference call. Some of these you may know, some of them you may not know why you need to do them, and some of them you might not know about. So the first thing is choosing your background. This may sound pretty straightforward, but you would be amazed at, I'm sure you've already been on several calls that you're like, really? That's the background that you chose for today? I encourage you to consider two things about your background specifically, and that is one, that it is relevant for the meeting. For instance, if you are in a lunch and learn, or you are specifically meeting someone over lunch, or you're doing a baking demonstration, whatever, those would all be appropriate perhaps at your kitchen table. Especially a lot of us tend to have the best lighting around the kitchen table, which I'll talk about that in just a second. But typically speaking, you want to have a background that is consistent and relevant to the topic that you're talking about now. The second thing to keep in mind, and then feel free to analyze my background behind me. One, I am a style person, so you're going to see a little bit of style behind me, and also you're going to see something bright and colorful because, listen, I think we all need a little bright and colorful right now. You also want to keep that background pretty clean on the back so that it's not distracting. So that's the first thing, choosing your background. The second thing is bring out your eyes. So when you are meeting in front of a room full of people, when you are standing on stage, I'm going to back up a little bit, hopefully you can see that. So if I'm backing up and you are looking at a person on stage, you want your entire ensemble, your entire outfit to look like a cohesive unit. You want to match your hair is what you're going to go for. But if you are meeting one-on-one with someone, if you're up close and personal with someone, I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here, then you're going to see that person's eyes a lot more. There are a couple ways to do that. Here, I've just chosen a bright shirt. I went with my somewhat cougar red so that we could be on theme today, but in my case, my eyes are hazel, so if I went with something like a hunter green or an emerald green, that's really going to make my eyes pop. That's important because, listen, eye contact is where all the good stuff happens. So you want to really bring out your eyes, keep the attention here, and make that stand out in the Brady Bunch of video squares that we tend to see. The third thing, perhaps the most important, is to find the light. Find the light. You want to, in my case, I have 2 photography lights sitting in front of me because that's where my desk is in the room. But if you can arrange yourself in front of a window or something like that, it is 1,000 times better for several reasons. One, having a well-lit person, one, you're going to look your best. There's a reason that we all look wonderful with a professional photographer taking photos of us, and that's because there's good lighting. So one, you're going to look your best, and then also you look current and relevant and present. And really, I know that that is what we're going for with some of the image that we are trying to portray here at work. So you want to make sure that you are well lit whenever possible. Again, that means sitting in front of a window or using lights. There are very cheap options available. You can get a ring light, you can do photography style lights, but there are a plethora of options, all well under $100, $20. I mean, literally anything. So take a look and make sure that you are well lit. And then I'll speak specifically about makeup just briefly, and that is that when you are finding the light, so when you are well lit, there's a lot of forgiveness, which is wonderful. It doesn't matter how much Mexican food you had the night before, it doesn't matter how much mask knee you're sporting, the light helps tremendously. So you don't necessarily need to go all the way with your makeup, especially because it can actually look a little bit incongruent. If we are going all the way with our makeup, like heavy dark, it's going to look a bit incongruent with where we are today. We're all home, perhaps in a work shirt and maybe in sweatpants. I don't know. For today, I'd like you to know that I did go ahead and go not all the way with it, but more because you're going to be staring at me the whole time. So keep that in mind with the makeup. Check your edges is the best way to think about it. For guys, if you are having to rush on to a call real quickly, run your hands through your hair. Ladies, same thing, so that you've got some smooth shape on the outside. Same thing, eyebrows and lips, just to draw attention to the outlines of your face is basically what you're going for. But don't feel like you have to go all the way and do all the things for makeup. So the other thing that I want to point out in terms of clothing is always have either a denim jacket or a casual blazer, or guys, a collared shirt, women a collared shirt as well, whatever works, but something that can be dressy. I mean, if you are in a swimsuit or if you're in pajama pants, you can throw on a blazer or a denim jacket, and that's going to immediately elevate your look and look more put together. So have one of those easily on hand from a clothing perspective. One thing you can also look for with clothing is detail up near your face. So in this case, I have a bow on my shirt, but having some kind of detail up near your face, again, gives some visual interest for this one little box that we're looking at, so you can see the person there. So a few style tips for you before we jump into the actual facial expressions. So you may have heard this statistic before that communication is 7% verbal, 38% vocal, and 55% nonverbal. So as you would expect, that means we are taking in everything about a person first, and then we are considering the words that they actually used, unless you're a very serious words person, and perhaps that percentage might be a little bit higher for you. But generally speaking, we're looking at so much. And think about with a video conference, we've been stripped of a lot of that because now we're only looking from shoulders up, essentially, depending on how far back you are from your screen. So this section suddenly becomes a lot more important. The virtual highlight, the eyes have it in spades. The important part about eye contact, there are several things. One, it serves to establish connection. If I'm looking at you, we were talking about this briefly. I was talking about this with Seth and Whitney. My laptop has my video camera in literally the worst possible place. So I have to kind of look down. Don't worry, I will be buying a separate one shortly after this. But I have to, if I'm looking here, I'm looking at you and we can have eye contact. If I'm looking somewhere else, if I'm looking at my presentation, which is natural for me, that's going to look a little bit like I have broken connection with you. So whenever possible, look in the camera so that you can establish connection and have that eye contact moment. The other great thing about observing and establishing connection is that you can observe people's reactions. If I am looking down at my phone, if I'm looking at my notes, if I'm multitasking, if I'm doodling, whatever it is that I'm doing, if I'm not looking at you when I drop the bomb of whenever the deadline is, or the percentage of staff that's getting cut, or that somebody else is getting a new job, or whatever it is, if I'm not looking at that person, I miss out on a treasure trove of reaction. So I don't get to see exactly what's happening with that person if I'm not looking at them. And then the last thing is it establishes trust. We've heard this before, no doubt, that if someone's sort of looking up, or they're looking around, or they're just sort of looking anywhere other, it not only prevents connection, but that also makes it very difficult to build trust. We trust people that we can see. We trust people who are looking at us in the face and seeking connection with us. An interesting tip about building trust as well with the video camera. I know it's a little bit hard because, again, we're only seeing shoulders up, but you want your hands to be in the screen whenever possible. Please don't show up to your meetings like this. That would be interesting. But unless you're working for Disney, I don't know. So whenever possible, if you can show hands, that is wonderful. If you're not typically a very hands expressive person, that could be something very simple. If you just at some point have a pen and you wave it around for 2 seconds, whatever, just a reason to get your hands into the frame. Again, that's if you're not a typically hands expressive person, because that really does help establish trust. We want to see people's hands. We want to know what you're doing. What are you doing? So let's talk about facial expressions. Actually, before I show you that, let's talk about facial expressions. So there are 7 micro expressions, and it's a little bit like naming the 7 dwarves. So I'm going to look at my notes while I name them. But these micro expressions were established via the study of a professor and psychologist, Dr. Paul Ekman, who you might have heard of. If any of you have watched the show Lie to Me, it's a little bit old now. I actually don't remember when it came out, maybe early 2000s, maybe 90s, something. It was really great. It was obviously the Hollywood version, but it was all around the science of micro expressions and what our faces and our body language tell people without us necessarily even knowing it. And that's one of the advantages of us being here with faces front and center, that we can see those instantaneous reactions to whatever somebody is saying. And actually, I know we hate the dreaded frozen screen. It's so annoying. I get that. However, what if that freeze happens right when somebody is showing a particular micro expression? Now you get a chance to actually study and look and see, okay, they didn't respond well to what I said, or they did respond well. So we actually have more opportunity, even with a frozen screen, to see people's reactions. The funny thing about these micro expressions that Dr. Ekman discovered is that no matter who you are, It does not matter gender. It does not matter upbringing. It does not matter race. It does not matter culture. It doesn't matter age, nothing. Everyone shows these microexpressions in the exact same way. And I have such a great example of my daughter that I'll show you here in a second with surprise that happened at 2 months. Obviously, she's not had enough time to learn the full microexpression gambit, and yet she perfectly displayed that. Not even, it's just instinctual. Microexpression, as you would expect, happens instantaneously, and then it's replaced with the macro expression, which is the way that we want to truly portray how we feel about something. So it happens very, very quickly, and it's something that you don't want to miss. So you need to be paying attention, looking at that eye contact. So I'm going to go through these and show them to you, and then we'll talk more about what to do with them. So the first one is surprise. Yes, we won't talk about gun control at the moment, but I will tell you that this is from a show called Money Heist, which if you have not seen it, it's excellent. I cannot vouch for the language. It's really not great, but the show itself is really fantastic. So the first one is surprise. Surprise, and I gave them each a little name. Forced open is how I would consider this one. Forced open is literally like someone goes boom. So you've got eyebrows up, eyes open, and the jaw drops. So keep that in mind. It's like a ball has been, or a balloon has been hit with a baseball. So you're going to see that flex where the eyebrows up, eyes open, jaw drops. I'm going to show you this video, and I want you to watch very carefully to watch her expression. You're going to see somebody yelling first, and then you're going to, let me just confirm this is muted, hopefully. And then you're going to see her expression. So he's yelling, and then you're going to watch her in just 2 seconds. There. Okay, it happened real fast, didn't it? I'm going to show it to you again. Right there. Okay, I'm going to show you this next slide so you can see it frozen. This is her expression at the exact moment where she shows her microexpression, and you can see it. I really recommend after we've done this for you to go, look, I'm telling you, go binge watch television for a hot minute so you can see microexpressions played out, because it shows up a lot in acting. But you will notice whenever there is a surprise scene where someone is supposed to be surprised, for whatever reason, this particular one, the camera very rarely shows the actual person. It shows the activity that's happening, but it doesn't necessarily show the person's face. And a tricky thing about microexpressions, you can't really fake them. If you are exceptionally good and perhaps working undercover for the FBI, you might have been trained to do this. However, for the rest of us, faking microexpressions is nearly impossible. So she does have what you would expect traditional microexpression, but I'm going to go back for a second and let you see this video again. And I want you to look, so he's going to yell, and then it's going to go back to her for a second, and then they're going to kick the door in. And right when they kick the door in, her microexpression is actually not surprised. Her microexpression is she cringes because she's expecting it. This is a scene that no doubt they've acted out several times, and then she goes to the surprise. So I'm going to show it to you one more time. You'll have to tell me in the chat later if you were able to see it. And watch right there. Did you see she kind of flinched, and then there was the surprise? So again, these microexpressions, incredibly hard to fake, but want to make sure that you're seeing those. Feel free to practice these along with me as we are going through them. So surprise is the first one. That's the forced open. The next one is going to be disgust. And this one, just think about scrunching, like you've just had a sour lemon or sour news, whatever it might be. Disgust is scrunched. So the lower lip is going to be raised, the nose wrinkles, the lines below the lower lid. It's literally like you've smelled something bad. It's just, ugh. Hopefully you're not seeing this very often in your meetings. If you are, let's talk. Maybe we can work on some different techniques. But disgust is that scrunched look. Again, not one we necessarily want to see, but you can identify it and then see if their microexpression matches the micro expression, or if it was just something instant that happened. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment as well, but take these as data points, not necessarily gospel, but they are data points. Because they cannot be faked, it's obviously a feeling that the person was feeling in that moment. So disgust is the second one. Fear is the third, and fear is tensed back in the same way that you would think about surprise. Literally, if you think about somebody coming up from behind you, boom, you've got that forced open. Now fear, think about somebody coming up from in front of you. You're going to basically jump back with your body, and your face does the exact same thing. You're going to see tension, but tension toward the back. Like our face is literally trying to run away from the moment. So our eyebrows are raised and drawn together. This is easier when I'm like seeing myself, but eyebrows raised and drawn together. I'm going to see if I can fake this a little bit. Upper lid raised, lower lid tensed. So upper lid is going to go up. Your lower lid is going to be tensed a little bit. Mouth is going to be open a little bit, but the lips are going to be tensed. So it's not a relaxed look. It's not a free look. It is, like I mentioned, you're going to see that tension in this fear look. And again, I encourage you to spend some quality time when you're watching television or hanging out on Zoom calls, whatever it is, try to identify these micro expressions, because you can train your eyes to see these, and they are valuable. Many of you mentioned when you were RSVPing that you are interviewing candidates, that you are presenting to large groups, that you are doing one-on-one. I'm sure students are doing presentations in front of, obviously, video now. So all of those different moments are times for you to practice and see how you're seeing these micro expressions show up. So surprise, disgust, and fear, those are our first three. Then we're going to go to anger. Anger is what you might expect, tensed but forward. So fear, which I think this is so interesting because for you psychology people, typically the root of anger is fear. So I think it's so interesting that the relation, even in the facial expressions, is there. That fear is the tension but back, anger, tension but forward, because listen, I'm coming after you. With tensed forward, your eyebrows are going to be raised and drawn together again, but you're going to see those vertical lines between the eyes. No matter how much Botox you've had, if you're real mad, you're still going to see something there. Lower, maybe not no matter. Maybe if you had a lot, you wouldn't see it, but you're still going to see a little bit of tension there. Lower lids are tensed. Here's one of the pieces that's very hard to pretend, and that is that the nostrils dilate, and then that the lips are pressed and typically gone down a little bit. So let me see if I can do my best angry face. I need to have my children come up and maybe they can break something and we can practice. So anger, this is going to be especially important when you are, I know there's a lot of change happening and there's a lot of uncertainty in a lot of our lives right now, literally in every single part. And so this is something that you really want to watch for and see how people are responding. Many of you are managing teams. You need to know what's going on with your team so that you can best lead them. And this is one of the ways that you can see that. If they are feeling fear about an upcoming change or about an upcoming deadline or an upcoming presentation, or if they're feeling anger about the way that the department is being reorganized or the budget that's been cut for the department, you can pick up on these cues and then use them to better establish connection and to lead them well. The next one is happiness. I have two different examples here because I'll talk about it in just a second actually. So happiness is up and light, just as you might expect. If you're happy, you're feeling light, lighter than air, no doubt. Lip corners are going to be drawn back and up. There's a wrinkle from the outer nose to the outer lip. Cheeks are raised and crow's feet near the eyes. You know, we try so hard to get rid of these crow's feet, but listen, they say good things about us. I have these two images here because I want you to look at the one on the left, and you're going to see, look at the one on the left and look at the one on the right. The one on the left is a true happiness expression, and the one on the right is a fake happiness expression. So the one on the left, you're going to see that her cheeks go up, the apples of her cheeks are more pronounced. Also, it helps that the light highlight is right there because that makes them look higher as well. And you can see that her crow's feet are crinkled a bit there. Her smile is a little bit bigger. And then the woman on the right is not quite so there with her eyes. She's smiling with her mouth, but she's not smiling with the top half of her face. And listen, if you have ever received headshot photos that you didn't like, the odds are that they are because the expression on your face is not a complete expression. It's possible that that headshot shows a fake version of happiness instead of the true version of happiness. And I will say it's tricky because when you are smiling all the way, of course, your eyes don't look quite as big. And so that's a little bit harder. But if you can think about in your photos of keeping your eyes as open as possible, but also think about something happy so that you can have that full happy expression on your face if you're doing a smiling headshot, because the one on the right, it looks fake. Therefore, I'm not going to connect well. I'm just talking about the image itself. I'm not going to connect well with this image. That person may not come across quite as approachable as I might have seen with the person on the left. So you want to show true, authentic expressions. So if you don't see that in your headshot currently, I encourage you to go and get a new one. And there are so many wonderful photographers in Houston. I'm sure you have a plethora there on site, on campus as well, that you can also probably not have to pay very much for, as well as they're building their portfolios. So happiness is the next one. And again, we know when you're faking it. So go all the way with your happiness. The flip side of happiness is sadness. So the same way that happiness is up and light, sadness crumbles. And this particular expression, to me, it looks like they're just hanging on by a thread, and then the crumbling happens immediately after this. The eyebrows are going to be drawn in and up. The corners of the lips are drawn down. The jaw comes up and the lower lip juts out. Excuse me, that's the way you're going to see sadness typically portrayed. And a lot of times, again, with the sadness, that really might be one that is quickly covered up with something else. A micro expression of happiness, unless it was at someone else's bad news, a micro expression of happiness is typically going to follow with a macro expression of happiness. But often in some of our meetings, some of these other expressions might follow with a different macro expression. So it's important, again, to pay attention to them quickly. And this sadness, this one's hard to kind of come out of because the whole face is fallen. So there's actually a little bit more work in getting the muscles to then go into a different facial expression. And then the very last one of these 7, look, we made it to the 7 dwarves, is contempt. This is one we definitely don't want to see. And the best description I have for this is, oh, really? And there is one indication of contempt, and that is that one side of the mouth is raised. And here's what I encourage you with all of these. So actually, I'll just do a quick run through, and I'm totally going to look at my notes. Maybe I won't. I'll try to do it. Here we go. Surprise, disgust, fear, anger, happiness, sadness, and contempt. Those are your 7 micro expressions. Okay, so we know about these micro expressions. What do we do with that? What do we do with this information that serves us well in showing up well for our online meetings and projecting our best self, as well as interpreting the best of others? So 1, keep in mind, you are not immune from these. So while I'm showing you how to view them on someone else and what to do when we've seen them on someone else, you're going to be showing those same things yourself on your face. So you want to be just keep that in mind as you are considering what face you are showing on your conference calls. So now that we know about those expressions, here are some things that we can do. First of all, use it as a data point. I mentioned my children. I'm sure some of you have some kids running around as you are trying to do your video conference calls, or you may just have construction happening right in front of your house, or you may have the fire alarm going off, or there could be a plethora of things. So if I'm presenting, maybe it's just a team of 4, I'm giving the monthly, weekly update, and I see this contempt face go across one of my attendees, and I'm thinking, gosh, I thought it's odd. Consider it as a data point, because they may not have been thinking about your moment. They may have been thinking about, okay, I told the children to be quiet and they are screaming downstairs. And what's happening? What do I do with them? How do I get past this? So again, consider it as a data point, but it is a valuable data point. All of these pieces add up to create a complete image. The second thing, consider whether to pursue it. So if the macro expression then starts matching the micro expression, or if they start using words that confirm that they are afraid. In our current situation, the word safety comes up a lot. I was noticing some of the advertisements. I think Walgreens has an advertisement about all the things that you can, how you're feeling maybe, and they show you all the different things that you can toss into your basket. Count how many times the word safety shows up in that advertisement if you happen to see it. I'm sure it's on YouTube, but you need to consider whether or not to pursue that. So if they start saying words like feeling safe or feeling whatever, then maybe that does tie into the fear expression that they showed. Or if they start using words that follow with anger or follow with happy, or that was a great decision, whatever it is. So consider whether or not to pursue it. And then one thing you can do also is allow room for input, which is a reason that we have a Q&A session at the end. With a smaller group, you would be able to have some feedback happening while you're in the midst of the presentation, but allow room for input. I know, especially if it makes you nervous to present, or if it makes you nervous to get in front of a group, or if the idea that you're presenting makes you nervous, whatever it is, we might have a tendency of not allowing any room in what we're saying. There's a pause. It's painful if you're the one actually presenting, but it's so important, because if I'm talking the entire time, again, in a meeting where we are allowed dialogue while it's happening, there is no room for someone to jump in. So you want to allow room for input so that you have a more collaborative experience. The people who are attending feel like they are more involved in the conversation. You don't hear the word buy-in quite as much as you did. It's a buzzword that's not quite as popular, but it is still important. You want people to be bought in with whatever it is that you're talking about. And if you're allowing room for input, then that helps. Explaining more. If I'm watching and I say something and like 6 of the people that are on my Brady Bunch screen show the exact same micro expression, I might need to explain myself a bit more. I might need to explain a little bit more of why we're pivoting in this particular direction, or why we've decided to do this topic and not this other one, or why the deadline has been moved up a week, whatever it is. There's always room for explaining a bit more if your audience looks confused or is not responding in the way that you expected them to respond. I will caveat that statement with one thing. And this is stereotypically something that females do more than men. However, both sides do it. And that is, if I see that everyone is not responding in the way that I expected them to, and I need to explain more, I might start talking faster, and I might start explaining, and it might start sounding like backpedaling. So I encourage you, if you are going to explain more, give yourself a pause. When we were looking at the numbers, it made the most sense for us to have this deadline because this other event is happening. So that's why we moved the deadline. Give yourself pace yourself well so that you don't start talking fast. It looks frantic. It looks like you're trying to defend yourself. It looks like you're backpedaling, and that's not what we're going for. You want that executive presence all the time. And one of the ways is to make sure that you are speaking at a pace that projects confidence. And then the last thing that you can do with that information is, of course, ask questions. You guys are going to ask questions of me. I might ask questions, again, if I saw an expression or something that I wasn't expecting. I can ask questions. I encourage you to make them open-ended if you actually want real answers. If you make them closed with a yes or no, you're really going to have to work real hard to get the information that you're wanting. But if you're asking open-ended questions, then it allows room for your audience to give you a bit of feedback and explain a little bit more about how they were feeling, or what their questions are, or what you might need to explain more. They probably will give you that data, and then you know what you need to explain. So these are just a few of the ways that we can show up better and also interpret and connect better with the people that we are on conference calls with on a daily basis, right? I know we're on calls all the time, but what a great opportunity that we have to see people up close and personal. I mean, I'm looking at, well, not right now, but if I'm on a call, I'm looking at your faces, literally the length of your screen. So about 1.5 feet away from your face. I don't get that luxury. Typically, American personal space is 3 feet. So I don't get to see you quite as close, but I get the chance to see you up close and personal a bit more with these video conferences. So we can use that and show up best and show up well for each of those things. We're going to open it up for questions here in just a moment, but I wanted to, first of all, thank you again for having me. These topics are near and dear to my heart. I think they're fascinating, and I personally want to connect well with people and want to give people tools to connect well with each other and to show up well and to be their best. We've been given unique gifts, unique talents, and unique opportunities, and whenever possible, when we can use those to best project ourselves and to best elevate others around us, I mean, nothing but good comes of that. This QR code connects you to sign up for my newsletter. Many of you might have already signed up on my newsletter for when you registered, but if you did not, feel free to scan this. I would love to send you some information, and then I will also open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Absolutely.
I know we have some feedback. I think it'll go away in just a moment. Yes, thank you so much, Natalie. This has been really great. I appreciate very much the 7 micro expressions that are actually seen through video, and now we'll be definitely thinking and paying attention to those things. And then I really liked how you talked about connecting better with people through video conference to not only project ourselves, but to also elevate those around us. That was really great. We do have some questions that came in through the RSVP. So I'm going to first start with the first one was, how can I best conduct a large team meeting in an engaging way?
Great question. There are a couple of things that I encourage you to do when you have a large team meeting. First of all, consider how much actually has to be in the meeting. I know we have a tendency of just saying, let's throw up, let's have a meeting, and tend to walk in with maybe not a tight agenda, or we don't have our main talking points. Consider what your main points are, write them down, plot out your sound bites so that you have those sound bites ready and you can be concise. Because, I mean, while our attention spans are possible and are there, I mean, we've all binge watched a show, so we know that our attention span is there, but one of the ways to keep it engaging is to keep moving through those points. Another thing to do in terms of keeping it engaging is you be engaging. Your person, the facial expressions that you use, whether you're smiling, how much you're using your hands, how much you're moving your body. If I'm standing here and I presented the entire presentation like this, and we're going to talk about the 7 micro expressions. These are really valuable. The first one is surprise. I mean, you're asleep in like 15 seconds. So keep yourself engaging first. And then the other thing is use different mediums in your presentation. We had a little bit of everything here. I've got bullet points. I had a video. I had just blanked. Photos, that's what they're called, photos. I had photos, and keeping your presentation diverse in that way is helpful as well. And whenever possible, ask people for feedback. It does not have to be just you standing in front of the group every time. In this case, we were presenting a lot in a short period of time, but any way that you can keep people engaged and asking questions, filling in chat, having poll questions, those are all great ways to keep people engaged.
Wonderful. Thank you, Natalie. Another question we had was, how can I feel more comfortable in front of a camera or microphone? And do I need to have my camera on all the time?
I love this question so much. So my answer is yes, you need to have your camera on. So the person who just asked that, they just died a little inside because they're not feeling comfortable, but I'll tell you how to feel more comfortable. And I talk about this, actually, you're going to get a cheat sheet with some additional tips after this. And I do talk about video in that. But yes, you do need to have your camera on because we are missing out on so much opportunity or so many opportunities to connect with people right now. We don't have the hallway pass by. We don't have the office drop in. We don't have the water cooler chat. So any chance that you have to be visible in front of your colleagues is critical because out of sight, out of mind applies here as well. So you want to make sure that your camera is on. And then the second thing that I will tell you in terms of how to feel more comfortable, I know it can be nerve-wracking. Make sure that you're well lit so that you look good. Start there. But then what I encourage you to do is just start trying it. Just do it. You got to start somewhere. If it's helpful to start with smaller talks, do it then. Have your friends FaceTime practice. Even if the reason you're uncomfortable is you're not sure how you look, then practice with angles, whatever it is. And then I'm going to give you one more tip. I'm actually going to stand up to do this. And that's also to prove that I actually did this presentation while wearing pants. And so we are going to, I'm sure you've heard of Amy Cuddy's, this is going to look strange probably, Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. If you have not watched it, go immediately after this and go watch it. She did a TED Talk on power poses. And it's literally, you can be in a power pose for 2 minutes. So if I'm here for 2 minutes, it actually changes how I can show up to a meeting. It gives me more confidence. It decreases my cortisol levels. It increases my testosterone levels. And those two things combined help me show up more confidently. So that is one way to show up. And another way, talking about the psychology of color, I promise I knew what I was talking about today, but wearing red helps. If you're not feeling confident or if you're presenting a boring topic, wearing red is a great color because it gives life and it gives confidence.
Well, that fits really well with the University of Houston.
It
I
does.
know a lot of our staff have lots of red, lots
right.
of confidence there then. The next question is, how do I transmit energy in an online meeting? So I know you kind of touched on it with the color red, but is there any other information you'd give regarding that?
We did. I would give one more thing, and that is your distance from the camera. So if you are leaning back, and this happens in person too, if I'm leaning way back and I'm presenting this way, I don't look as engaged as if I am here and sort of not looking like I'm going to pounce, but a little bit where I have just a little bit of that leaning in. That's going to be more energy than if I'm presenting this way and talking about our numbers and how great it's going to be. That's just not as engaging. So I would encourage you to lean in as well.
Wonderful. Another question, I think this is a really great one, especially because you kind of talked about headshots. As an experienced professional who is graduating with a new degree, what can I do to avoid, in quotes, experience discrimination on LinkedIn?
That is such a good question. So I have two things. One, don't fight it. Lean into it. You have a unique set of gifts and talents and experiences that no one else has. So don't you dare try to hide that. Use that to best present yourself. But what I would encourage you to do, excuse me, with your LinkedIn is to make sure that it looks very current, because what can happen is experience can fall into older/outdated. And that is not the vibe that I'm sure you're going for. So I would encourage you to make sure that you have a fresh headshot, that you have language in your bio, and even language in the description of the work experience that shows current language, whatever, don't fill it with buzzwords, but whatever the current terminology is for the field that you're going into. And then I would encourage you to trim your LinkedIn profile to gear your experience toward whatever it is you're going toward. You don't need to put every single solitary thing you've ever done. If you want to make sure that you're showing you had work experience the entire time and there were no gaps, then just put the time frame, the company, and the title, but you don't have to give the 4 bullet points of everything that you did there. Just give one summary sentence and move on. So those are a few things that I would do, but lean into that. That you bring something different to the table that other people who have that degree might not have. So also it's about marketing yourself. Look at ways that you can speak in a way that shows how your experience applies to the new degree and the new field that you're going into.
That's really great, Natalie. I really like that. Lean into it. And the last question we have is, what are the major don'ts in a meeting? And then, of course, for this question, this might come with some of the things in the virtual toolkit, but what are some of those major don't do's?
Yes. Well, the major don't take the video call from your bed or from the bathroom or from some other random location. That's one of the things that I was mentioning with choose your background. Obviously, pick your background wisely. And Whitney did mention, I do have 6 ways that you might be compromising your online presence in a printable that is going out to you, I believe, after you complete the survey. So once you complete the survey, then you'll have that as well. And that has 6 ways that I would consider that those are the major don'ts. And of course, one of them is choosing the right background. Don't take the call from a place that we don't want to see. Don't want to invite the entire staff into our location.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie. We really enjoyed your presentation today and all of the expert advice that you've given us. This is going to be great for us as we continue in this new environment. And as everyone has said, we don't know what that new normal will look like, but certainly the information that you've provided us with today will elevate us into it, into our online presence. So thank you, Natalie.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. If you would like, Natalie, do you mind switching back over to that QR code for the audience to be able to join your newsletter? So Natalie has put up her QR code just in case you would like more information. Feel free to scan that QR code, everyone. And we'll leave that up for just a moment. But thank you, Natalie. Again, we really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, everyone. So the next part of our presentation is, or our event today, I should say, is to allow for you all to join a breakout room and hear more information and tools and techniques on either Microsoft Teams, what we have been using as a university, or you can join the Zoom breakout room and hear more about how all the functionalities in Zoom. I know that they've done some updates here recently as well, so as well as Microsoft Teams has. So we have 2 experts joining into those rooms that will provide you all with more information. So the links will be published into the chat, and you are welcome to join whichever one you would like. The links to the breakout room were also put into the email that was sent out this morning. So there's a link in that email that was sent out first thing this morning for whichever breakout room. So feel free to join at any time. The other thing that I do want to mention is the virtual toolkit. So normally if we were in person, everybody would have some nice takeaway, tangible takeaway, but of course we're in a virtual environment. And as Natalie just mentioned, there is a virtual toolkit that provides actually not just a 1-pager, but a few pagers from Natalie on some techniques and tips, as well as information on Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So if you're not able to make the Teams and you want to go to the Zoom, you'll still get that information. The only thing you'll have to do is fill out our feedback, our survey that we're sending at the end of this event, and then that virtual toolkit will be sent to you. It will also include some backgrounds that you can use as well. So it'll be nice to have all of those in one place. So with that, please feel free to join either breakout room. You can visit the Zoom breakout room, or you can visit the Microsoft Teams breakout room and hear more information about each of those platforms. And that is actually where the event will end, is in the breakout room. So head over and we look forward to seeing you all there.